Mr. Tom Cochran, the CEO and Executive Director of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, all the way from Washington, D.C. Welcome to you, Tom.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Great having you in South Africa, yeah.
It's great to be here.
Tell us about your organization. Who do you represent?
We represent the mayors of the United States of America. Our organization is 81 years old. It was founded in 1932 when we had the Great Depression. Mayors went to see President Roosevelt and rented a space and had a conference of mayors, and the name has stuck. And so we now are a prime lobbying organization, best practices, research, political action. We are bipartisan, and right around from the White House is our headquarters.
You obviously well represented at Metropolis. What do you believe is going to come out from this conference? Is it not just another talk shop, or do you believe there could be some firm action, concrete action?
Well, we come here under the Safer Cities network, which is under the UN Habitat. And I had the mayor of Los Angeles, Antonio Villaraigosa, and the mayor of Houston in March in New York City. And for the first time, we have passed a resolution at the United Nations, which would set up a trust fund for cities to be funded directly on the question of public safety. We have gender violence, youth violence, violence in the home, violence in the streets. And so in America, in the United States, the mayors have the police function at the local level.
Yeah.
And in other countries, they do not. And gender violence, youth violence, and what we call street violence is a big problem. If you do not have a safe city, you don't have a city. And so that's what this is all about, to share best practices. And I'm focused on that track here at this meeting. There'll be other issues, but we're here supporting our efforts with the UN for a trust fund for public safety.
Tom, we repeatedly hear of the New York success story, the New York example.
Yes.
What can we learn from you? What do you have to share?
Well, it starts with small things. There's, you know, the broken window syndrome.
Yeah.
But it also, you know, we have to find something for our children to be for, something for them to say yes. So we start with preventive programs, but yet so many young people in America and others are dropping out, and so with no jobs, and many people are going to prison because of the mandatory census on drugs, which sends thousands of young men to prison, and then they come back. And so when they come out of prison, we have to work on second chance to make sure that these children do not go into gangs, that we find jobs for them. So this is one aspect of it. What are we doing on the front end to prevent violence?
But obviously we need strong leadership. I mean, that's the bottom line.
You need strong leadership, and we need compassionate leadership. And you cannot, you know, lock people up forever and ever. It will not work. You've got to do it on the front end, and we've got to have our national governments to recognize that the human beings must be invested in, that a child is the most important thing. We can have wars, we can have airplanes, we can have ammunition, but the greatest thing is for a child in those formative years. We feel very strongly about that. At the same time, we can't be so open-minded that our brain is falling out. So we have to be tough about crime. But going back to your question, you know, you start with the small stuff. Design is very important with crime. Lighting is very important. So you can't just have the builders just start building. And the mayor has to also be somewhat of an architect in making sure that there's transportation for people where the jobs are. So there was a time when the jobs were in the suburbs, now the jobs in the cities.
Yeah.
So now people, but if people don't have a way to get into the job, so it's very complicated, and it's the job of a mayor to be on top of all of that.
I mean, you talk of law enforcement. Obviously, law enforcement on a local level, making sure that your bylaws, your local laws are implemented is critical to the success of any metropolitan municipality.
Yes, absolutely. But I think community policing is very important. There was a time when police used to just ride around in air-conditioned cars.
Yeah.
But we started something in our organization called community policing. And that means that the police have to go out and be involved in the senior centers, in the youth centers, and be involved in the community so that the people trust the policemen. And this is a big problem because you have crimes, you have violence, and no one reports it, and no one will talk about it. You know, snitching is not good. So we've got to, the policeman and the policewoman have to work the neighborhood to make sure that there's trust there.
You know, the roles of communities are obviously critical. I'm also the Vice President of Crime Stoppers International, the global body that encourages communities to blow the whistle on any form of wrongdoing.
Right.
And you say snitching, people are afraid. But surely the communities have a critical role to play in ensuring that the neighborhoods are safe.
Absolutely. And the other thing that we have now is social media.
Yeah.
The tweeting and also the emails and smartphones. So the social media has been a big part of governance. And so it's also a big part of crime control. So you can just send a message right away, and all of a sudden you have and then when you have the child missing, they have what we call the Amber Alerts, named after this child in America that we lost. So all citizens are being taught now, and children also, how they can use the smartphones and Blackberries and those kind of devices, because all kids have them.
As you're fully aware, Tom, South Africa is not immune from the high crime rate. You in Johannesburg, very often dubbed as a hotspot for crime around the world. If you have a few messages for our mayors in South Africa in terms of safer communities and safer cities, what will that be? What do they have to do?
Well, I think you need to look at, as I say, you need to look at what we did in New York. There was a time when you couldn't walk the streets of Washington D.C. at a certain time, or Chicago, but you have to have the community policing. You have to have the trust. You have to build that trust, and also you have to have a police force that's trained, and you have to have a police chief that's got a master's or a doctor's degree. So the John Wayne, not a politician, and not a rootin' tootin' cowboy. And so we have inside the United States an organization that we work with to make sure that the person who is a police officer, the most powerful man in America is a police officer because he's got a gun on him. He can kill you. So they have to be trained in how to use that. And it's very tricky. And it's very dangerous. But you can't just come on a police force now without having training. And I think with the support you have in your community to do volunteer work, cleaning up a place, putting lighting in, making the place you feel better about your neighborhoods. And that's what a lot of this stuff is. Because once you feel like you have developed and it's your place, when someone comes along and desecrates it or there's crime, then you feel like you have some ownership in that.
It's often said that tackling the real root causes of crime is a solution. Tackling poverty, tackling unemployment, tackling the lack of services and lack of sporting facilities in certain areas. Very critical, you believe, for cities to do that?
The Reverend Jesse Jackson says, it's best to invest on the front end than to pay for the back end. Now, if you don't have all of that, the cost of putting someone in prison for the rest of their life, and we have prisons all over the United States, it's absolutely ridiculous. We have so many. But the idea is, as I said earlier, we need to recognize that, a 14-year-old with an AK-47 is an adult. And the police officers and the police chiefs are looking at those kids coming up 1, 2, 3, 4, 10, 11, 12, 13. And we have many police chiefs who are working with the community to make sure that those kids are not become people they have to deal with, in the criminal justice system. So prevention is very important.
I mean, we talk of drugs. I mean, and I don't think any city or any country is immune to the drug problem, including the United States. We've just launched in South Africa a partnership between law enforcement, local authorities, and the community and the media as well, called Drug Watch. What is our solution in your view, Tom?
Well, here's the scene.
Yeah.
There was a time in the United States when the rich people snorted cocaine on glass-top tables.
Yeah.
It was a rich person's drug. But when they developed crack, you see, we took the mayors and the police chiefs to New York City, and the chief in New York City said, "This is crack." Now that means that you can get a hit of drugs for $3.59, about the price you pay for a Big Mac. And so when we had crack in America, that's when the violence started, because they're starting selling that stuff down, and you put guns and you put crack and money, and you got a problem. So this is one of the problems, and you know, cocaine and those kinds of substances cannot be grown in the continental United States. And so, you know, but in Toledo, Ohio, it's there. So there's an international responsibility here too. You know, I mean, we can't grow it we can grow marijuana in the United States, but you know, you can argue about that all night. Right now, we have a tendency in America to legalize marijuana. That's coming strong in some of our states, and it's totally different though than crack. Totally different.
Interesting. Tom, thank you very much for joining us. That's Tom Cochran, the CEO and Executive Director of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. And I'm sure you're going to be enjoying the rest of your stay in South Africa.
Absolutely.
And doing something good on Mandela Day on
Yes,
on Thursday.
we love Nelson Mandela. And the United States Conference of Mayors passed a resolution very, very early in the days when he was in Robben Island, 18 years there. We supported the Sullivan Principles. We brought our keys to the jails of the United States and dropped them in a fishbowl at the UN, and we also had an opportunity to meet him and be with him when he came to the United States in 1996. So America loves Nelson Mandela, and we are praying for him and his family.
Thank you very much, Tom. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Just give us a few more moments, and then they will cut.